Ba-na-na-na-dun-dun-dun-dun. March Madness, Scottie. It's finally here, man.
Finally.
Woo! Let's go.
Can everybody hear me?
Loud and clear. I got you.
Thank you.
Good. There we go. What's up, everybody? Scottie Borderline, Curtis Wilkerson here from Natty State Sports. Pod at the Palace, pod in the portal, whatever you want to call it. We are taking a calculated risk by recording Thursday morning before the NCAA tournament games start, with the understanding that we might have to go live or record again later in the day if things get weird, but we're trying to free up the schedule so we can watch some hoops, man. Like, this is Christmas Day kind of stuff for me. Like, this is my favorite day of the entire year.
For sure. I woke up just naturally at like 5:30 o'clock or like 5:30 in the morning, and I filled out a bracket. The last thing I did yesterday before I left the office was fill out a bracket. I hadn't done one on paper yet. Printed one off for both of us. Filled it out, saved it in drafts, published it as soon as I woke up.
Love that.
Tweeted it.
I love it, man. I cannot wait for these games to start. It just has such a different feel. On one hand, it sucks because I would love to be in Name Your Destination right now, covering a Razorback tournament run, but I'm not going to lie, man. Like, I'm pretty excited to just be able to watch and gamble.
we haven't gotten to do that in 4 years.
Yeah, man. And especially while Arkansas is still playing, like, it's not like we're just at the game and then the day is over. Like, there's prep that goes beforehand. You're writing a bunch of stuff afterwards. You're preparing for the next game. Like, I can't remember the last time I just sat for an entire day and watched an NCAA tournament, and like, that's getting ready to happen. So I'm pretty pumped about it.
Yeah, I am too. It starts with I don't know if you call an 8-9 a banger, but Mississippi State, Michigan, I feel like that one's going to be pretty good. That's a good way to kick things off.
It really is, especially for guys like us. I mean, it's an SEC school versus a legendary coach in Tom Izzo. Like, sign me up for that, man. That's a good start. I like it.
The streets are saying that Izzo's been whining a lot.
Yeah.
So Jans and Cam Matthews, I hope they jump all over him.
I hope they do too. I need them to for financial purposes, but we'll see what happens there. I think Kansas and Samford is tonight too.
Ooh.
That's going to be. I'm tuned in start to finish on that one.
Yeah.
But just a lot of good games, man.
Check out Akor from Samford. He's a big board guy. I have no clue if he'll portal at all, but that's a kid that probably needs to be playing in a bigger conference.
Yeah. Yeah, no
Plus,
kidding.
like, Bucky McMillan is one of the coaches that you hear about in the carousel all the time. Like, could he follow Bucky wherever he goes? Maybe. But yeah, there's going to be some schools that if he's available at all, he's gonna get a bag.
Yeah, the dude's good. His name is easy to remember because the first and last are the same. So there you go. It's like Bowl, except cooler, in my opinion.
Shout out Bowl.
Yeah, always shout out Bowl. This is a Bowl friendly podcast for those who weren't sure about that. If you can't tell, the vibes are pretty good this morning. We're excited about the day here. The format that we've been rolling with this week, Scottie, has kind of been to like try and dive into just a different specific layer of the portal and recruitment, whether it's like coaching carousel impact or NIL or whatever, and kind of how it relates to the Razorbacks before we kind of give updates on, new prospects, nuggets that we've come across, whatever. And so I think we're just going to kind of keep to the theme of that. At the end of the show on, I think it was Tuesday, it's like right before we were finishing recording, you caught wind that Tyron Lawrence, the Vanderbilt guard, was entering the portal. And I look at our board that's behind you there, and there's tons of SEC guys on there, like Silas Demery of Georgia, Anderson Garcia, Texas A&M, Chad Baker-Mazara,
There's
Auburn.
a bunch on the backside of this board. Yeah.
Then Allen Lubin, Vanderbilt. Like, the list goes on and on and on. Tyron Lawrence, obviously. On one hand, like, you think of Arkansas's portal approach and how, and we've talked about this at length even before the portal season started. That's kind of half of this board. It's like Arkansas really likes to pursue guys that they've played against in the past, prepared for, scouted in the past, that they're familiar with. So from that standpoint, like, SEC guys would certainly make sense. I know you know the answer to this, but I'm going to tee you up anyway. Muss has coached at Arkansas for 5 seasons. How many SEC transfers has he landed?
2.
Can you give me the names?
Trevin Brazile.
Yes.
Jackson Robinson.
Yes. Trevin Brazile and Jackson Robinson. In 2 years, those are the only 2 SEC transfers that Eric Musselman's brought into Arkansas. And as we know, they bring in several transfers every year.
Yeah.
And
they like the AAC more.
they love the AAC, man. Big AAC guys,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah, especially last year.
Definitely. Yeah, they just went cherry picking in the AAC
they
last
really
offseason.
did. Davenport, T. Mark, Caleb Battle, like they were all over it, man.
Yeah, you can even go back like Ricky Council, Trey Wade.
Shoot, yeah.
Like,
yeah, dang.
it just keeps going and going.
We should just do an AAC set. That's okay. So, what's today's Thursday? Tomorrow's Friday. So what we might do for this segment Friday is just an AAC. Like,
Top
who are the
AAC
portal
guys.
guys from the AAC, and we'll be all over that one.
I like that.
Stay tuned. It'll be a banger.
There you go.
I wonder, Scottie, like how attractive of a destination Arkansas is for SEC transfers right now, because we look at it from the opposite angle of, boy, if this dude from the SEC hits the portal, if I was Arkansas, I'd be all over it. But I wonder how reciprocal it is on the other end. And one thing I keep going back to, Scottie, when we were in Nashville last week, talking to the South Carolina players in anticipation that we would have that matchup, I think it was you that asked BJ Mack about like what he remembers about that game against Arkansas in Fayetteville. And the first thing he said was, yeah, well, they had a lot of controversy going on. And I have not been able to shake that. And then he started talking about knocking down threes and getting out of a shooting slump. But that was the first thing he said was, I remember how much controversy they had going on. And I was like, dang.
As soon as we finished talking to BJ, we looked at each other, or at least I think I looked at you and was like, what controversy were they talking about? But it was just drama.
Yeah.
It was just drama. Like it, and like I said, maybe yesterday or the day before, it's insane how much the drama traveled and like how widespread and national.
Yeah, I didn't realize the reach
got.
was like that.
Yeah,
you know, like here in our bubble, it was, everybody's talking about like whatever rumors were stirring, and like things weren't working out, that like whatever. We're gonna have to rehash it, but I didn't realize that it made its way into like other locker rooms. Like, hey, we're going down there, and Budweiser Arena is usually a tough place to play, but those guys are going through it right now for XYZ reasons.
Yeah, for sure.
And so that, and then I think to later that same night, the Vanderbilt game, when T. Mark and Kai essentially have to get pulled away. Well, Kai has to kind of get pulled away from T. Mark from maybe killing him because they were arguing on the floor, like right there in front of Vandy's entire team. And I think about Tyron Lawrence just standing there watching that whole situation. This stuff happens with a team, like, it's, games are emotional, whatever. But between those things and just a handful of SEC opponents this year where, for lack of a better term, Arkansas just kind of folded and packed it in those games, it makes me wonder how the program is currently perceived within the league. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which could potentially right now be a lot different than it was this time even a year ago. Because for a while there, you had Arkansas's, like they play harder than everybody. You probably hate playing against them, but you respect it because they play so hard and they get after it.
Yeah.
And the transfers have success and they win and they make tournament runs. And then this year, all this BS has happened. And I just wonder how much it shifted.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm totally with you on the, Eric's previous teams that made deep tournament runs, they played hard. And you're right. I think opponents respected that a lot. Didn't necessarily, I don't think, make them super interested in coming to Arkansas. Mm-hmm. But yeah, last season, if you're an opponent like you're Tyron Lawrence, for example, you're probably sitting there looking at him like, it's kind of a mess. And and you go from the high of the previous seasons to what Arkansas was this season. Like Arkansas was like in the preseason projected to finish top 3 or 4 in the league.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then like
top 15 in the nation.
Every kid on every team knows where in the preseason they're supposed to finish, and they take note of where other teams are projected to finish. And then when things don't go great, they take notice of that. And Arkansas was one of the biggest fallers, I would imagine, from preseason to, end of regular season, what your seed is in the SEC tournament. And kids take notice of that. Mm-hmm. I'm sure, and they just noticed that, Arkansas this year wasn't like in previous seasons,
right? Yeah,
and so they'll take note of that, and
And like you have to sell, like from a recruiting pitch standpoint, I've been in this situation before on a much smaller scale, obviously. But, when I was at Lindenwood Belleville, like we had a few years in a row there where we were cooking and we were going to national tournaments and everybody, like we were a transfer heavy school too, because it's hard to recruit freshmen in the NAIA, first of all.
Yeah.
But we would go after, D2 guys, D1 guys who weren't playing or whatever. And just like, we were kind of like last chance you, but it was working. And then we had one year where we had one bad injury and it was kind of the same deal, right? There just wasn't a mesh there at all. And we finished 13-18 on the year. We didn't make the tournament. We were like in the back half of our conference. And I remember just from this is personal experience, like recruiting that off season compared to every year prior was so much harder because of that. Because it just changes the way you have to operate. And so you have to sell the full body of work and the history. You have to sell it as a blip on the radar. And I'm not saying anything that other people don't know or that Eric Musselman doesn't know or whatever. But like it's just different, and it makes me wonder. Like there were some times there this season where the results were kind of embarrassing given the standard of the program.
Yeah.
And I wonder how it changes their approach with maybe some of these in-league guys that they've seen before. Like, what, do you pursue them as hard? Do you, like, I don't know. I just wonder how you approach it.
Yeah,
We'll see.
I really don't know. I'm not recruiting minded at all, but I would imagine like you prep for a guy, you know what a guy's good at, what he's not good at, and how you could, you're looking at a kid's game and you're like, hey, maybe we could, this weakness that he's got, we got like a program that could help him out with that. And yeah,
Right.
Absolutely. I think you pursue guys. I went back and looked, Curtis, through the last 3 off seasons of SEC to SEC transfers. It's gone down. The players going from one school in the league in the SEC to another, it's gone down each of the last 3 off seasons.
Really?
So the spring summer of 21, so going into the 21-22 season, there were 9. The next off season, going into 22-23, there were 6, and then last off season there was 5.
Wow.
So
it's just not happening much
it's just
anywhere
not happening
in the
much.
league.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's it. And it seemed like when, I guess it was just the portal, like the advent of that, it was, maybe that was the approach to begin with. If you want to, it's like you're familiar with guys and you want to try to, hit a quick rebuild or whatever, you go with, higher level guys who you've faced before and, throw them a bone and see if they're interested. But it seems like it has gone down. And it's not like the biggest name from last offseason was Alan Flanagan.
Oh, yeah.
And then Jordan Wright.
Followed Pops.
Yeah.
Jordan Wright, yeah.
But
Not the barbecue man, but.
Right. What struck me about the SEC to SEC transfers last offseason, 3 of the 5 included Vanderbilt. And then 2 of the 5 included LSU.
Okay.
So Vandy, LSU, not great programs.
Right.
The previous season.
Good
And
players
so
trying to get into better situations.
Yeah. Yeah. So they're trying to pick like a guy who would be really good on their team, but was maybe like a, 3rd or 4th option.
So what you're saying is we should be
nervous.
nervous that Arkansas is going to lose their best players to better programs in the SEC. Is that what you're telling me? No, I'm just putting words into your mouth.
There you go. I don't know.
But from the other standpoint of that, like it kind of that's encouraging.
The
from
Flanagan
the Vanderbilt
one made
side.
sense.
The Flanagan one made sense. His dad switched staffs. With Vandy, it's like like we got Tyron Lawrence and Vin Allen Lubin on that board, so.
Yeah,
If y'all want to keep up that trend, come on now. But like, I don't know. And so maybe, we're just, I think naturally so much more familiar with players from the SEC, and so is the fan base because you see them so much, sometimes twice a year. Rivalries are formed. It just means more, right? To where when an SEC guy hits the portal, you're automatically like, Hog, yeah, love that guy. He'd be a great fit.
Squidward meme, Razorback.
And yeah, exactly. and maybe and I'm not saying it can't happen or that they're not going to pursue those guys because they will, but in general, whether it's an SEC guy coming to Arkansas or just SEC to SEC transfers, it ain't happening that much. So maybe we, don't get as excited when that happens. Yeah, temper
Yeah.
those expectations a little bit.
Yeah.
And there's also, and I should have done my homework before we started, but there is a deadline in the SEC to where if a guy enters the portal or if he tries to transfer to from SEC to SEC after a certain date, like you have to get a hardship or like a waiver approved for that to be eligible,
Okay.
like from the conference. And I can't remember what that date is. Something I'm saying May 1st, May 15th or something. I don't know. I'd have to look it up. But that is also a thing to keep in mind there. But yeah, just another thing we were thinking about. Like I know we were sitting there talking about it after Lawrence, entered the portal, and just got to thinking, like, man, Arkansas really doesn't get that many SEC guys. It turns out it's just not really a thing too often in the league.
We were talking about that yesterday, and the only one that I could think of off the top of my head was TB.
Yeah.
I'd forgotten about Jackson Robinson.
Yeah.
From like 3 off seasons
Right.
seasons ago. But yeah, it's
spent that first year at A&M, that COVID year.
Yeah, it's been a rarity for sure.
Okay, and I get the sense that people are. There's almost like a split right now. Just like going through my mentions and like looking at our comments on these videos and everything of what the hell is Arkansas waiting on versus like they need to be patient, wait it out or whatever. And we've talked about it, so we don't have to get into like there needs to be a balance there. Like I think they need to do some work early. They also need to save, some of their bullets for like when these tournament teams drop out and the the pool gets larger, whatever. So I went back though to kind of look at some past trends and see what kind of dots we could connect in terms of when to expect a splash. Like what are we looking for here timeline wise?
I like that.
Because we know, like I just full disclosure, and we said it before, like they're trying to make moves here quickly. They want to be smart. They want to be prudent. They don't want to be reactionary, but they're trying to get the ball rolling, man, because you need things to snowball. And so that's why, like, I'm always kind of waiting on the edge of my seat. And every time my phone goes off, I'm thinking, well, hey, maybe something's getting ready to pop here. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if something happened before the end of the weekend or whatever.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it will, but if they have it their way, it will.
Yeah. I mean, you hit on maybe, quote unquote, the right kid to start. That's going to get other kids' attention.
Exactly. That's
and
exactly
it's like maybe
right.
there's another kid that the kid that popped is connected to. That's like,
right.
maybe starts taking interest in Arkansas. Is like, man, I might like to play with that.
To play
kid.
with him, or if you're on the fence on, like, am I sold on Arkansas or this school versus Arkansas or whatever? Then like one pops and you're like, oh, okay. Like they convinced this dude, or oh, he's a hooper. I remember him. Whatever. Yeah. Then that could get things going, and I think that type of momentum you need in an off season like this, where you're coming off of a tough year. But I went back and looked, and so essentially, like when Arkansas seasons have ended the last 3 years versus when they've made their first splash in the portal, and like what's that? And obviously, it's different this year because they're not playing in the NCAA tournament. And so they were done for a few days before the portal even opened. So you got to keep that in mind. But 3 years ago, Arkansas's season ended on March 29th against Baylor in the Elite Eight. March 29th it ended. April 1st, they added Audi's Tony.
It's pretty
that
fast.
was like they got home from Indy and boom, done.
Good one.
Yep. The year after that, the season ended against Duke on March 26th. March 30th, Trevin Brazil. Boom. The day before that, they got Anthony Black.
Right.
So like
remember
you had
AB being first.
Yeah, you had double pops there. First portal was Brazil on the 30th, but before that even they got
that set a hell of
Anthony
a tone
Black.
for that offseason, didn't
Dude,
it?
yeah. Because I remember, I'm going to get off on a little bit of a tangent here, but it was like fly down to Tampa for whatever reason for the SEC tournament because it wasn't in Nashville, and then flew back to St. Louis to my dad's house for Selection Sunday. They get their seed, fly to Buffalo. They play their games, fly to San Francisco. They play their games. They get eliminated. My wife and her family are on the opposite end of the country on the East Coast where we were going to get married, like checking out the venues, doing some different stuff. So I flew from San Francisco then 3 time zones over to the East Coast. And I have a layover in Chicago, and I land, and my phone's blowing up from everybody because it was Anthony Black's going to Gonzaga. And then I land, and it's like, hey, he's committing to Arkansas tonight on the McDonald's All-American thing. And I was like, shit, you know? And so had to go back and find that story and everything. And I get on the message board and be like, whoa, you know? And then landed at Richmond Airport in Virginia, got off the plane, went down to the rental car place, sat there, waited. He popped, typed that or published that story, then got in the car and went to the wedding venue and ate dinner. Woke up the next morning, and because I've had connections to Brazil from my time at a previous job, and get a text that says, "Hey, you know, TB's on a visit to Arkansas right now," and I was like, "Really?" And it was like, "Yeah, and you might want to have something ready." And I was like, "Okay," so wrote it, and then before dinner again, boom, popped, and he was done. I actually got lucky from that standpoint, but that was a crazy
What a whirlwind!
That was nuts. I've never been so tired and like out of whack from time zones in my life. But anyway, just 3 or 4 days there. Last year, Arkansas's season ends in Vegas against UConn on March 23rd. They didn't get Keon Minifield, who was their first transfer portal addition, until April the 4th. So a little bit longer of a time frame last year. Arkansas's season ended. When was their last game this year? 15th? 14th?
Yeah, the 14th.
The 14th, yeah. And here we are, March. So it's been a week.
It's been a week.
And so you're starting to enter that timeline where you're like, hey, what
What's
are we
up?
doing? Like, when what's up? Hey, big head, you up? You know, like, when are you going to get something done here?
Yeah.
And so not only from that standpoint are we getting close, like it's also March 21st, and you look and it's like April 1st, March 3rd, April 4th. Like, they're even from a date standpoint, they're getting closer and closer. So like something is going to happen here soon. And I know there's a handful of guys that we'll talk about here in a sec who, you know, could fit the profile. The other thing about Muss and the portal that I've noticed, obviously they do a lot of diversions and smoke screens, and they try to keep you off the trail. A lot of times they surprise you in the portal. Like, we get a lot of these contacts and everything, but they're good for one or two just out of nowhere where they land a guy that you didn't even know was on the radar.
Right.
You're like, oh. And so we know some of the guys who are, we know some of the guys that they're serious about, but I would not be surprised to get surprised at some point here.
Yeah, yeah.
They're good at that.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. There were quite a few portal contacts. It felt like after we recorded yesterday.
Yeah, no doubt.
That I'm really interested in, but yeah, I'm with you. Like I said, I'm not a huge recruiting guy. Like in the past, like the recruiting guy at my previous job would just be like, hey, they're looking into this kid, and so I start doing research and reaching out to people who've covered the kid before, just to try to gather insight and stuff. But I've been totally taken by surprise on several of those, and just felt like, when the kid committed, I was just in total scramble mode.
Yeah.
Trying to get any parcels of information that I could whatsoever. So that wouldn't, like you said, it wouldn't shock me at all either.
For sure. Okay, so let's move on to just some, new names, maybe some new nuggets for the radar. So I'll throw a couple out here real quick. First, a name that I've been told to keep an eye on, who, I don't think anybody's put out there that he's been officially contacted or whatever. I'm fairly certain he has. Makai Mason out of Rice. There's some connections there between Arkansas and the Rice staff, the kid's family, I'm told. So, maybe one to get familiar with there. We'll see what materializes from it, but just a lot of dots that can be connected there for sure. Another 6'4" rangy guard, and Conference USA All-Freshman team 2 years ago, 14 points per game this past season. I don't know that I project him as a starting guard or whatever for a really good SEC team, but I think he could be a nice roster piece if it came to fruition. So Makai Mason is a name maybe to keep an eye on there. Chauncey Jenkins out of Old Dominion, we've talked about him quite a bit. He's an OG on the portal board.
Yeah. Should have flipped it around for this one.
Yeah, the guy who scored, he have 21 against Arkansas and Bud Walton. in that game earlier in the year. But a couple nuggets of note on him. He is former teammates with Ricky Council, by the way. Like, he started his career at Wichita State. So there's connection there. Hopefully that's a good thing. You know, like maybe there's feels like a good conversation to be had, right? But I've confirmed with the Arkansas side of things that not only have they been in contact with him, but they like him a lot, and they view him as a guy who could be like a mainstay rotation piece if he joined the roster, and I think that's pretty high praise. And again, like, a lot of familiarity there with, you know, former teammates. They've played Arkansas before. He's familiar with Bud Walton Arena, familiar with Fayetteville.
Yeah.
So, you know, something to keep an eye on there for sure.
I really like Chauncey's game. 20 plus points 9 times, and what did we have in here for his build? We had Ja Morant. I mean, I think we talked about that yesterday, but he's a
twin.
Yeah, he's a nice player. I don't think, like, if you look at his shot chart and stuff, like, there's not going to be a lot that blows you away, but he can score at all 3 levels, and he's long, really good shooting a 3 from the left wing, and then he really likes, like, the short corners of the left and right baseline.
Yeah,
kind of made some hay there last season. But yeah, he's a really good player. I've reached out to a few people just to get some intel on him, and hopefully I will have that in his profile soon. Love
that. This morning we're gonna start. Well, maybe we'll start at the top and kind of work our way down here. This morning, as I was trying to get a little fitness in this morning, I was out in the neighborhood jogging, if you want to call it that. It's more of like a fast walk, maybe. At this point, but anyway, you know,
that's cap.
I'm a big fella, right? So it's deceiving. It's like long strides or whatever.
Right.
So, at any rate, Sam Alexis, I know you love this kid. Big fella from Chattanooga, was announced that Arkansas had been in contact with him. Whatever, like, you hear that and it's cool. Like, they gave him a phone call. That could mean anything. Like, there's been guys that I've reached out to, and I try to reach out to all of them, and some respond and some don't. But, you know, like, hey, like, what are you looking for in your next program? Saw you heard from Arkansas. Like, do you mind sharing who you've heard from? And sometimes it's like a GA, or, you know what I mean? You're just like, so maybe they're just feeling it out or whatever. Well, as soon as I saw that Arkansas had been in contact with Sam Alexis, I shot him a message and asked him the same question. He got back to me right away, and he was like, oh, I've heard from everybody, the entire staff. That's what you like to hear.
Yeah.
Right. Like, if you hear Muss, you're like, okay, they're serious. You know, or like some of the other, like, Key Smart or Root, like whoever the assistants. But if you hear from Muss, then you know it's a guy that they're really interested in. But when you hear no, like, the whole staff, that tells you, okay, like, antennas up. This is a dude that I'm going to pay attention to.
For sure.
Right?
You told me that, and I was like, this warms my heart. You sent me the text that he'd been contacted. I missed it somehow. I feel like I've got a million different account noties on.
There's a lot going on.
And missed it. But I started building his profile, and I was like, Curtis, I like him. I like this kid. And then I doubled down and was like, a lot.
Hard not to like, dude.
Yeah.
I mean, he's
37th nationally in block rate, top 100 in offensive and defensive rebound percentage. I think he was top 50 in defensive rebound percentage. 9 double-doubles last year, 12 games with 3 or more blocks. Had a high of 17 boards. And it not just like the double-doubles obviously stand out, but if he had scored more, he would have had like 15-plus double-doubles.
Yeah, he nearly averaged a double-double.
Yeah.
On
really
the year.
Good player.
Over 2 blocks per game. Like, you mentioned his block rate and everything. Like, he's
Mekhi Mitchell build who's not afraid to step out and shoot a 3.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, somebody was in the mentions on Twitter. A good account, like Hog Film Room, good account. Like, you can tell they really do their research on some of these guys. But he was like maybe a taller, you know, better offensive version of Chandler Lawson, just with, you know, like the block rate and everything. And he's talking about the drop coverage that they run at Chat, which is exactly what Arkansas does in ball screen coverage. He does a really good job with it, which I appreciate. So I think there's a lot to like there. Mm-hmm. If you overlook the Jalen Graham free throw percentage. Yeah. But, you know, again, like, when you have a front court, like, even if, and I don't think this is going to happen, but even if they got Bayfall and Trevin Brazil back, you still have a super thin front court. Like, they ain't your starting center there.
Yeah.
You know, like, you need some dudes and some depth in that front court. And man, that's a guy that I like. And chat, they always got some dudes, man.
They do. Yeah, they're a fun team to watch.
Yeah.
And that will they play in the SoCon?
I think so.
Yeah, that conference always delivers, especially in their conference tournament. I was looking through Alexis's his KenPom page and his game logs: 13 and 17 against Mercer, 14 and 15 against VMI, 10 and 11 against Furman, and then he had 13.6 rebounds, 3 blocks at Auburn, and then he had 16, 11, and 4 blocks at Louisville.
I like that.
That's how he opened the season. Was pretty good game against Louisville and Kenny Payne.
Yeah, that'll play. That'll play. Okay, and so I think that was the first one today. Yesterday, some that we had already recorded. If you guys recall, we went live yesterday with the Devo news, and then we talked about some other stuff. We might go live tomorrow, depending on what happens the rest of the day today, and then we might go live again tomorrow. That was fun. I like answering people's questions and stuff, and getting that chat rolling. But some guys that we missed yesterday that were after our recording, Raheem Moss out of Toledo. My immediate thoughts on this dude: tough, physical, gritty, stat sheet stuffing kind of dude. 6'4", 205 pounds. I know you did his profile. There's a lot to like there with this kid. I don't know how serious they are about him or anything like that yet. It might be a little too early to say, but there's I think that Arkansas fans would appreciate the kind of game that he plays.
Yeah, I put in a Jonathan Modica-ish build. I think Arkansas fans were a big fan of Pookie when he was here.
Oh yeah.
One thing I found that was interesting about this guy, and it probably tells you a lot about his just his athleticism. He was offered by Kentucky and Cincinnati to play football in high school.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay, I didn't see that.
Yeah, that was. I think that was in his Toledo bio. But
I like that.
it's a kid that he's like
toughness.
if you look at his shot chart and stuff, he's an in the lane and 3 guy. But he was
So he's going to Bama.
possibly. Yeah, he'd be good next to Houston Maletia probably. But he was 3x on 2-point shots versus 3s. So he's a guy that wants to get into the lane and compromise defenses. And I don't think he's not a black hole by any means. He's averaged 3 assists a game. So I think he's a pretty nice player.
I'm looking at your profile now. Yeah, some interesting stuff here. He recorded a double-double, a points and assists and points rebounds double-double. That's hard to do, to be that
Really
kind of
is.
guy. I'm surprised he didn't get a triple-double at some point in the season. Maybe he came close. I don't know.
I have to go back and look, but that was really impressive. I had Kim Leonard. Shout out Kim Leonard. She's all in on the portal season stuff that we're doing. She's like, "What are your thoughts on this guy?" And I'm like, "Hey, I'm never not gonna like a guy that can get a double in multiple ways and be disruptive defensively." I think that may have been something else that I put in his bio. 1.7 steals a game, just disruptive defensively. I think he might be a fit if you're, I think the goal is to the goal is obviously to improve defensively
no kidding.
next year over this year. So he's an interesting kid.
Speaking of disruptive defensively and improving defensively, I owe somebody an apology. Maybe you, maybe this kid, Chris Mannon.
Yes.
From Cornell. I'm not gonna lie to you. Like, I saw Cornell and I was immediately like, whatever. It's just another.
You said that. I'm just like, I'll do the bio.
Stereotypical of me. I'll take the L on this one, but I was like, whatever. Like, it's just probably just some skinny white kid that has a high basketball IQ and shoots a bunch of threes, which is cool, but it's not a fit at Arkansas kind of deal.
Yeah.
No. This dude's good, man.
Bouncy Mason Jones.
Yeah. 6'5", 209 pounds. I mean, you look at the raw numbers, and it's like his stats are fine, but yeah, I mean, over 2 steals per game. That's a lot. Shot it well from 3. I like the bouncy Mason Jones thing. I see it. 5th nationally last season in steal rate. Like, this dude he'll guard you, man.
He's super efficient shooting the ball in Ivy League, like almost 38%, and then he was, made 2 out of every 3 2-point attempts in in conference play. So yeah, he was giving people problems. And if you watch his highlights, like these defenders did not do a good job watching their head. They just didn't. He put it on them a few times. He was he's got some fun highlights. Arkansas contacted him on Wednesday. But yeah, he 71% at the rim, 53% in the lane, and then the right side of the floor, he tore it up from three. So I feel like I keep saying there's a lot to like about all these guys, but like if you just Arkansas's looking at these guys because there is a lot to like about them.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. He's a nice piece, and again, like, you know, you're rebuilding an entire damn roster, so
yeah,
there needs to be a lot to like about a lot of guys, and they need to get them.
No doubt about it.
Another one here, Jordan Ivy Curry out of UTSA. Arkansas's contacted a couple dudes out of UTSA. 6'3", 175-pound guard. I remember he was kind of an early entrant into the portal and was immediately a dude where you were seeing a lot of buzz about, hey, he can really score it kind of guy, and I think I would agree for that. Over 1,100 career points scored. He had 38 against FAU, which was a Final Four team last year. Scored 33 at SMU, which was a good program this year. A 35.8% three-point shooter with 40-plus makes in each of the last 3 seasons. So he's not burning it up with a lot of volume, but he's knocking down the ones that he takes, over 1 per game over the last 3 years at a pretty good clip there. Again, man, like if you're looking for some offensive pop, I haven't watched enough to know how he projects defensively or anything like that, but I know he's a coveted dude that's being recruited hard because he can freaking score it.
He really can. I was looking at, I do the shot chart stuff, and if anybody gets annoyed by that, I'm sorry. I geek out over it because I like to know where guys score and where they shoot from, like where the percentage of a kid's shots come from, and like you don't want a kid like we were watching somebody's tape yesterday. 13% of their shots came from one area of the floor where they shot 15%.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so, like, you don't want that.
Understand your hot spots.
Exactly. So this Ivy Curry, right wing, left corner, shot nearly 50% from there last season on, solid volume. So find your spots, take your shots from your spots. I think...
Take your shots from your spots.
I think you mentioned that he had been contacted. We missed it yesterday felt like a while.
Yeah.
I was like, I think I wasn't super familiar with him. I don't think I'd heard the name, but wasn't familiar with his game. And I shot you a text. I said, I think this kid's pretty good, right? And you're like, very.
Yeah, he can score.
Yeah.
And listen, I'm an offensive minded guy. So anytime I see a dude, those little guards that just play fearless like that, those are my kind of guys. For sure.
Build is L. Ellis, if you're wondering.
Yeah, there we go. Like the exact same size, right? Quite literally. Mm-hmm. 2 more guys here that we'll hit on real quick, then we'll get out of here. Alex Anderson, interesting cat out of Incarnate Word. I think it might be the second guy they've contacted out of there too.
Yeah. Was it Sky?
Oh yeah, Sky. Yeah. 6'6", 200 pounds. I gave him a Jalen Tate build because he's a 6'6" point guard.
Yeah.
And so you hear that and immediately, like your ears perk up because you're like, well, we know how Muss feels about that. There's a lot about his game that I like from that standpoint. If you watch him getting downhill, and he is tough getting downhill, super crafty, really good finisher. He don't shoot the 3, man. I think he only attempted 6 threes last year. And so you know how it is. Like teams are going to pack the lane on you. They're not going to respect you out there. They're going to go under ball screens. So
another heavy at the rim in the lane guy.
Yeah, and so there would be an adjustment to be had there. But I love the size and 2.9 rebounds per game, 2.9 assists per game. He kind of fits that mold of a big point guard that Muss likes. So
yeah. The Ken Palm page showed he was number 5 in assist rate, number 4 in fouls drawn per 40 in Southland. So that's never gonna not appeal to Eric,
Yeah, for
and
sure.
He's 6'6" and handles the ball.
Yep.
So that's another box check.
Yeah, oh yeah. He loves those. So last guy here, and we've talked about him before, but he is now officially heard from Arkansas, is Toby Akani out of Illinois Chicago. UIC. So I really like this dude's game a lot. 6'8", 210 pounds. Another guy who is kind of all over the stat sheet. 11.1 points and 6.8 rebounds per game. You like that out of a big guard. But what I really like is 2 blocks and 1.5 steals per game. There are 6 dudes in the country who average more than 2 blocks and 1 steal per game, and he's one of them. And he's 6'8", long, 210 pounds. I put his build as Gabe Osaboyan. His game defensively reminds me of Gabe Osaboyan. He's a superior offensive player.
Yeah. Wouldn't be hard to be a superior.
Correct.
No slight to Gabe.
Yeah.
That was uncalled for.
No, I mean,
But-
I'll cite his offensive game. He can guard anybody, but I mean, come on.
Yeah. I really like when Gabe was here, I really liked his defensive anticipation. He was a 6'8" guy that would find himself matched on bigger players, and he would just slide right off their hip and right in front of them and come up with steals that way. So, yeah, Toby Okani, is a name that you've had on my radar for a few days now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we've watched his tape on college basketball scouting, it feels like several times just to, you know.
Stay familiar.
Yeah, just to kind of drive it home.
Always studying.
Yep.
Students of the game here.
Yeah, shout out college basketball scouting. They do some incredible work, just kind of breaking down kids' games into 4 to 6 minute videos. It's
strengths and
super
weaknesses.
helpful,
Like, they don't
man.
gas guys up.
Yeah.
They don't need to be gassed up. Like, they do a really good job. And it's not all scoring either. Like, guys got good assist rate, they'll show you. If guys got high steal rate or block percentage or whatever, like, they'll give you clips and examples and stats. It's a really, really good resource. I appreciate those guys a lot, for sure.
No doubt.
Okay, before we get out of here, so the other day we did, which is kind of like our top 5 available big men, and we'll pick our times to kind of go from position to position. I thought that this was going to be easy, but it was actually a challenge, because what we wanted to do today was kind of go through our top 5 prototypes, and what we mean by that is when Eric Musselman. It's rare, but it happens where he starts to drool out of the side of his mouth, and it's because he's found a 6'6" to 6'8" multi-positional, versatile, switchable defender who we know the type, we know the mold, right?
Yeah.
And so we were looking for those guys, and I found 5, and I found some that I really like.
Yeah.
You went first last time. I'll go first this time, and then we can see how the lists compare.
Okay.
Because it's tough. Like, I tried to view this from a standpoint of guys who are maybe kind of true small forwards who can also play that swing role as a small ball 4-man. And I was trying to keep some of the combo guards out of there, those 6'4", 6'5" guys that can play the 1 through 3, and it's tricky.
That. Yeah.
But it's whatever. Like, it's all the same, and they're all fits or whatever. But from my standpoint, I started my list with Darlin Stone DeBar out of Hofstra.
Preach.
We've talked about that dude, a 6'8" guard who shoots at 40% from 3 and has torched Arkansas in the past. Really big fan of his game. And I'm fairly certain that even though it hasn't been announced officially, and he hasn't confirmed it, but I'm fairly certain that Arkansas has been in contact with him. Same with Brandon Johnson, East Carolina. He was my number 2. We talked about him a lot. Another big dude. I think we gave him the Vance Jackson build. 6'8", shoots the 3. I think he made 65 of them last season. Michael Ajayi, we've talked about him too, out of Pepperdine. He was my number 3, 6'7" guy. It's being recruited by everybody in the country. Toby Okani, who we just talked about, I put him on my list from UIC at number 4. And then I really had to do some digging. And I've talked about him before, but I'm kind of bullish on this. And I don't know if the staff listens to this. They don't have time to, but if they do, like Muss, if you're on the treadmill or whatever and you're listening to this and you need a tip, just go get Demario Monsanto, man. Just go get him.
Yeah.
Go get him out of Wake.
That's a good call.
I get it. He's had some injury concerns. He's coming off a tough year. It's low-hanging fruit, man. Go get him, because when that dude is right, he can shoot the piss out of it from 3. And,
For sure.
And he's got the build, 6'6", 200 pounds. Been the ACC, older dude. I think he could fill a role and he could potentially be a steal. That's my pitch.
Yeah, I like that.
Those are my 5.
Yeah. No, I had number 1 was Darlin Stone Dubar.
Yes, good. He's
Love
nice,
him.
man.
Yeah, pull it out of the left pocket and then pull it out of the net.
He does do that. Yeah.
Michael Ajayi 2.
Okay.
Brandon Johnson 3.
Okay.
Toby Okani 4.
Okay.
And then I like Monsanto.
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
I like it a lot.
Basically, was that the same 5 or much?
It was the same 5. We just had Ajayi and Johnson switched.
Okay.
2 and 3.
I like Brandon Johnson, dude. That kid's got like, his range is almost like what we were watching the other day is like infinite.
Yeah. One of those where you like, as a defender, you're always uncomfortable because you're like, there's no way I should be closing out or be pressuring a guy this far out.
Yeah.
Because it's just so much more space for you to drive by me, but he will shoot that thing. And it's not NBA range. Like, it's beyond NBA range.
Yeah,
that dude
for sure.
He lets
it's
it
like,
eat, man.
What in the world are you doing range?
Yes. That's exactly right.
But yeah, Brandon Johnson was maybe, you were so right about the Vance Jackson call on the build, the shot motion, all of that stuff. He's probably one of my favorite tapes we've watched so far.
A lot of fun, man.
Yeah, like you say, he lets it eat.
Yeah.
But Dubar too. Love that guy.
Yeah. They got to find a way to get that dude. I don't know how you do it. I've heard honestly on him and Johnson and Ajayi, just doing some digging in various places. Sounds like those 3 guys are coveted, and I think they know it. So if you're looking on a place to disperse those NIL funds, it's probably going to start there if you want one of those 3 guys. But
No doubt.
That's the cost of doing business, man.
It is.
Have you seen the inflation in this world? Like, it's just what's going on right now. So you gotta pay up to get your boys. So
no doubt about it.
okay. Anything else? Did we miss anything? I think we covered a lot.
I'm good. I think you're going to be. This is not Arkansas related.
Okay.
But I think you're going to like a couple of the names that are soon to be portal hits.
Okay. I like that.
I've learned.
I like that a lot.
You're going to like it.
That
I can guarantee you that.
This excites me. This excites me quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And then just a final update before we get out of here. As of now, Mom is still the word officially on Battle, Mark, Brazil, Blocker, Fall.
Yes.
All still currently on the Razorback roster. I anticipate some fairly significant changes to what I just said, but we'll see what happens over the course of the next few days and weeks here. At any rate, as always, really appreciate everybody for tuning in and rocking with us. This thing's been blowing up. It's been crazy, and really appreciate all the comments and the feedback. It's early Thursday, so if anything crazy happens, we'll be back. We'll go live. Otherwise, we'll kind of plan on gathering some more info and enjoying the NCAA tournament, and we'll pick a window to get back on this thing and go live, do a little Q&A, and give some updates on Friday sometime. But for Scottie Bordelon, it's been Curtis Wilkerson with Natty State Sports at the Pod at the Palace, Pod in the Portal, whatever you want to call it. We're all over the place, and we will catch you guys tomorrow.